Hello viewers, I'm Ron Grant. You're watching 284 Media out of Tortola in the beautiful British Virgin Islands. A happy Tuesday to each and every one of you. It was Joseph Rowley who said, and I quote, "If you don't know where you come from, it's difficult to determine where you are." He also said it's even more difficult to plan where you are going. Today we take a moment to reflect on the historical fragments that have led us to where we are today as Virgin Islanders. While we prepare to celebrate Culture and Tourism Month in the BVI, the Great March of 1949 cannot be forgotten. The march was led by territorial hero Theodore Faulkner, who was joined by Isaac Glani Fonseca, Carlton de Castro, and more than 1,500 British Virgin Islanders. They marched through the streets of Road Town to the Commissioner's office in protest of issues adversely impacting the territory for which they had absolutely no control or say. The march was successful, and as a result, the Legislative Council of the Virgin Islands was reinstated in 1950 after being abolished for some 49 years. Joining me today is Director of Virgin Islands Studies Institute at the HLSCC Community College, Miss Bernadine Louis, Director of Culture in the Department of Culture, Dr. Katherine Smith, and Gabrielle Skelton, author. Stay tuned as we reflect, reason, and redirect the Great March of 1949, Culture and Tourism Month 2021.
You value traditions.
Today,
You value music. You value education. Family.
I love you.
Service.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Love. Life. At Popular, we're committed to you and everything our community values. For the things you value the most, count on us. Popular.
Viewers, welcome back, and thank you once again for sticking with us. Ladies, welcome back to the studios. It is always an honor and privilege to have you join and have a wonderful conversation. How are you both all doing today?
We're good. Thank you
for having us here. Great.
Wonderful. We are getting ready to embark on Culture and Tourism Month, and I have never seen such a jam-packed calendar in a long time. But before we get into the activities that we're going to be covering, of course we need to touch on the Great March of 1949, because with us today, Miss Louis and Skelton, you both published and authored the book, The Great March in 1949. Miss Louis, can you begin by really reflecting on the significance and importance of the Great March of 1949?
Thank you, Ron. I want to say thanks again and good evening to the listening audience. Thanks for having us on this program. I want to start by saying, first of all, that both myself and Dr. Smith, Katherine, we are members of the Public Holidays Committee, and we are also members of the Cultural Education Committee, which is charged with creating resources and other information on historical events, significant events in our history. And so this 1949 March and the restoration of the legislature is one such event, or the two events happened around the same time. The 1949 March, in putting the information together to do the publication, what I realized that we needed to let the public know, to set the context for this march, because it didn't just happen just by chance. There were a number of events that happened to bring us to that what we call a defining moment. First of all, we need to understand and need to look at or have some knowledge of when we were discovered, who settled here, and the administrations at the time. We need to be aware of the constitutions that were put in place at the time, the governments, and we also need to look at, ask the question, why was the Constitution taken away in the first place? And most important, what were the social and economic conditions of the territory at that time? Now, all of these factors put together created this situation, what you call a ticking time bomb.
Yes.
And it resulted in what we call the 1949 March. It was a march for justice. It was a march where the indigenous peoples thought that this was their time, and they were tired of being, left behind, of being left out, because history will show that the territory, after we were discovered, there wasn't really a government here. There were a couple of settlers. And I recall that, and Kathy would notice that one governor described it as wild people defying the laws of both God and man.
Wow.
So that created gave you the impression, it was very unflattering statement, but it gave the impression of, chaos here in the islands. And eventually, after we were brought under British rule in 1672, we were put as part of the group called the Colony of the Leeward Islands. And the governor at that time, he's stationed in Antigua. Now, being so far separated by water, because we were closer to what is now the U.S. Virgin Islands, they were then the Danish West Indies. We were at a time called a backwater of the colony, which means our social and economic conditions were not really good at all. But when the territory finally got a government in 1773, that was a government, of course, that was for the elite group or the planter class that was here in the territory.
Okay.
Our ancestors did not have a say, they didn't have a vote because they were regarded as property. So as time went by, we were just neglected, to put it mildly. And so eventually over time, we had pockets of active, both passive and active resistance. And things like the cattle tax of 1853, which again we will hear about, later on. We talked about it during the Heroes and for Bears holiday. And these were events that really created the situation that led to this march. I mean, Gabrielle, I'll let her speak. She will tell you about some of the conditions that were here as we did our research on some of the conditions that we found that really led to, this boiling pot, and eventually it created a situation where the local population felt that they had to do something, and so they had the march to the
Wonderful.
commissioner's
Gabrielle,
office.
I'd love for you to tell us about some of those events that really led to the frustration of the march.
Well, some of the information that I discovered was across a couple different books. Like in the life notes of Gerald O'Neill, he spoke about Commissioner Cruikshank and the way he handled the public purse in terms of they had water distribution in town, in Main Street, and he would take half for Government House, and there was another standpoint to source within that area of Road Town. So imagine the population, yes, it might be small, but you have one standpoint everybody has to go to get fresh water, and that's for your daily living. So it created a lot of, I should say, a lot of separation in terms of you have this governing body taking everything to make sure he's comfortable, and the rest of us is left to figure it out. And then there was also a situation where with the public lunch, I think it's named the Lady Kate.
Lady Kate, correct.
Yes, and you have Carlton's brother Godfrey, and he came up from St. Thomas, and he happened to sit in the governor's appointed seat, and the governor told him, this is Cruikshank, that's my seat, you need to move. So we had all local Rosa Parks.
Okay.
And Godfrey was like, no, I'm a Virgin Islander, I have rights to sit here. And he took him to court, and he did succeed in having whatever, I think his arrest turned over, because he was arrested for sitting in the governor's seat. Yes, so those are some of the things that you were seeing similar to a condition like the Dominican Republic with Trujillo, where he put himself almost similar to God and man.
Right.
So we had these situations happening with Governor Cruikshank. And there was another thing that was mentioned in the life notes of Gerald O'Neill, is when he said at this point he was categorizing the governor as he could only divide by two. It was half a government house, and whatever left was for the people. So he was like, to this point, you know what? Governor, do what you, well, I feel, that's how he translated it. Well, Governor, that's what you're going to do. We're going to find another way to get how we need things done. And he had no trust in the administration at the time. I think that governor also was magistrate. And I guess he wasn't fair in handing down punishment, because there's this situation where this guy was accused for some minor event, and to settle it, he set up a boxing match.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
So, yes, it was very interesting
Yes.
to know that your local governor, the commissioner at the time,
That's how he decided to settle it.
Right.
Right.
And you had, I forgot what the other guy, they call him, I think it was Nelson, the national championship of Nelson versus Kid Cruikshank.
Wow.
So, yeah, and those were the discoveries that we encountered while doing the research about this march.
I'm so happy you mentioned Life Notes by J.R. Neal. That is absolutely one of my favorite books of a Virgin Islander. It really encapsulates a lot of the early stages of how we, develop, and him particularly as a businessman, really putting the economic standpoint in respect and perspective for us. So I'm happy to hear that was one of the materials that you guys used for research.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, when we are talking, Rondo, about the 1949 march, though, we have to remember some very important persons on whose shoulders we
Yes.
stand. Because it was like from 1938, the name Hope Stevens should ring a bell.
Right.
He was the one he was a British Virgin Islander by birth and also by maternal side. His mother is from East End. And he went away and he studied and he became a very successful lawyer in New York. And he visited home, occasionally. He happened to have come back around that time in the 1930s, and he found the conditions deplorable. And so he tried to canvass a couple of persons in town who he viewed as, activists, persons like David Fonseca, Mr. Howard Penn, Mr. Charlie Georges, Mr. J.R. O'Neill.
Mm-hmm.
These were persons who were part of what we call the BVI Civic League.
Okay.
And so the whole process started from then. But it was really this gentleman, and I'm sure we all know who he is, Mr. Theodolph Faulkner, H. Faulkner out of Anegada, a fisherman by trade. He came to Tortola with his wife for medical care, because the medical care was deplorable. So, like Gabby said, it was not just the actions of the commissioner at the time that people were very dissatisfied, right?
Yeah.
But
Now-
we were backwater. The social and economic conditions were deplorable, and so he started talking about the situation in what is now the Sir Albert Georges Plaza, and people joined him and they listened, and then he was joined by Leslie de Castro and Mr. Isaac G. Fonseca, who was the son of David Fonseca.
Right. Now, that march essentially led to the reinstating of our legislative council, and this year is the 71st year since that took place. You both, Ms. Louie and Ms. Skelton, worked together on putting this book together, which I'm so happy that you were able to accomplish. What can we learn, though, from the events that really essentially frustrated the people 71 years later? What can we learn from these events?
Oh, that's an awesome question, Ron. You can learn so much about bravery, sacrifice. These gentlemen, they were very young when they went out and did this march. And they had opposition. Opposition was there, and despite whatever negative effects they were experiencing at that time, they choose to put the right to choose their legislature, the way that they are going to be governed was more important than their fare. So it's a lot of things that we can learn from them in terms of the fact that they wanted a transparent government. They wanted to be able to have a voice. They wanted to make sure that when they pay tax, they know what their tax was going to. They wanted improvement in their economic status. And I think they were kind of tired of having to travel overseas to make life better here. They wanted to be able to stay home, stay with their families, and be able to have a good life. So I know for doing the research that we did, education was important to them. They wanted more economic, better situation for them. They wanted to be able to have prospering businesses and be able to send their kids to college. A lot of these individuals when they went to school, they went to Antigua Grammar School. And so as I said, education wasn't very developed. and our social services in terms of what theater fought for. It was like months before a doctor came over to Anegada.
Wow.
And there's an image of, I didn't send it to you, there's an image of the hospital back then. And we're working on getting that illustrated in a watercolor. But it was a very simple building, and simple as most that you can see it as in terms of engineering structure. And you barely had a medical officer here. Half the time he was stuck in the BVI. And when I say in the BVI in Tortola, that he couldn't get to the neighboring islands, the sister islands. So and persons weren't economically at an advantage to just say, okay, let me take this big old seaplane and go down to Tortola and have the doctor see my wife or whatever relative. So it's just that the more strain, and they decided that enough is enough and we want better. And they fought for better.
Enough. And we thank them for making us stand, absolutely. Ladies, before we move on to Culture and Tourism Month, I must ask you about, of course, research heavily played a part in the authoring of this book, and we're so happy that it's published. But Ms. Louie, tell me a little bit about the process in putting this book together. How long did the project essentially take you, ladies, and what were some of the other elements that you had to incorporate?
The project, putting information together, took a while because the whole idea is, and we are working with the Department of Culture, because I just mentioned the committees and the impetus for moving it forward, that we are charged with, in those committees, with getting information resources on these important elements of history and culture. But the thing that we notice is that, yes, we have some of this information, most of it, in various areas, various publications. A lot of them do academic publications. Okay. And so what we wanted to do was to have a series of what we call easy readers. We are trying to then incorporate those into the national curriculum and also for the general public. So easy readers of these really important defining moments of our history. That's what we were working on. So it wasn't really too hard to find some of the information, even though we had to dig a bit further to get really details. But the whole objective is to bring it together in one publication. And these are publications, easy readers for our, the education system, especially the grade 4 to 6 and the secondary school and the general public as well.
Beautiful. So, congratulations on the completion of the book, and I do wish you guys much success in the documenting of Virgin Islands history, heritage, and of course our culture. Dr. Smith, we are celebrating once again Culture and Tourism Month, Heritage Month, as many persons know it. We have a jam-packed calendar. I want to really ask you though, because we've been dealing so much over the years. Why was it important to still have these celebrations and observation of Culture and Tourism Month?
Well, the Culture and Tourism Month, and it's great being here, Ron. And by the way, I love working with these two ladies on our various committees.
I can see you guys have a great working relationship.
Yes, yes. And on those committees, of course, we work with the Ministry of Education. The Chief Education Officer is on there, I think, in an ex officio capacity.
Yes, she is.
The Social Studies Officer and the Head of Curriculum Studies.
Yes.
Yeah,
Mr. John.
Yes. So we're glad we were able to get that committee going. But yes, we had the first Culture and Tourism Month last year. So it was inaugural, and this would be the second annual one. And what's really important about it is that we've extended the Culture Week, which happened last year, into an entire month. And why is it important? It's important so that we build our cultural tourism. And in doing so, we actually have two things that we do. We build our culture in the territory through our cultural artists, through our heritage, culinary arts, everything. And at the same time, we start to develop those creative industries, right? Which can help us to really expand into a great cultural tourism product.
Beautiful. So what are some of the fascinating aspects to the celebration, the month-long celebration of Culture and Tourism Month?
Okay. Now, you said that it was jam-packed, and that is true.
Yes.
There's so much going on. There's so much energy. But let's look at it this way. It's jam-packed, but the first 2 weeks are literally devoted to the BVI's first ever Lit Fest. And a lot of work has been going on for months regarding this Lit Fest. It's the BVI's first ever Lit Fest, BVI Literary Festival. And so basically, if we understand the first 2 weeks, you know, we have our opening ceremony on the 1st, of course. I think that would be at 10:30 and be streamed live on the BVI government's page. But the Lit Fest has a set of workshops during the first week. Please follow us on Facebook for those to know how to register. And I'm telling you that there's one on publishing that you do not want to miss. We know from the Department of Culture, and look at these two ladies right here, that so many people are interested in publishing. We have such a great presenter. We got him, and you know, please register into that workshop, everybody who's interested in publishing. We have of course, we have our poet laureate. We have our workshop on poetry. Poetry has just blossomed. We're all for it, you know, and you know, let's all become poets. So that's one during the first week as well. And then of course we have one on nonfiction. Why did we choose nonfiction? We took a look at what we love to write in the BVI, our authors, just like these two ladies here. Do you know what we love to write? We write our history of education. We write the book that they just wrote.
Yes.
We write history of nursing. You know, we write these nonfiction books that are amazing, and we could just go on. Look at the biography that H.R. Penn that you just referenced, right? And so that's why the third workshop is on, and we've already had some people asking who want to write their memoirs. So that's why that third workshop is on nonfiction. And so I'm saying, people, like, we know that you love to write. We have two writers right here. Check out those workshops, register into them. They're virtual. Everyone from the Sister Islands, I want to say that, can attend.
Amazing.
Yeah, they're virtual. And so that's what's happening for the first week with the Lit Fest. Now getting into the second week. We now have these panel discussions under the name of Let's Talk Lit, right? And a lot of work has gone into getting our international and regional literary artists onto those panels. If you check out our Facebook page and you see the calendar that's going around, you'll see the names, research them. You do not, and we're driving, hopefully we drive this internationally as well. You do not want to miss these because you have this element in a Lit Fest. Once you do a Lit Fest, you draw people to your island, and so this is our first ever. They are also virtual. They'll be about 7 p.m. in the evening during that second week. And of course, they're on fiction, essay writing, nonfiction, and poetry as well. Complete panel discussions, everybody. They are international and regional renowned and known literary artists, authors. So that should be pretty exciting. And you know, you would just sign up onto the Zoom. You should follow us on Facebook, like I mentioned, or these where we would be sharing them live as well, the BVI government.
Beautiful.
Not the workshops, but the panels in the second week. And this culminates in an exciting book fair on the Saturday. Thanks to Mrs. Louis, it'll be right there at HLSCC, in the library around that area. And then an evening in the auditorium of an evening of music and poetry. Open mic, it's being organized, has been being organized for some time, so that should be pretty exciting. I do want to say though, during those first 2 weeks of the BVI Lit Fest, we do have, and we're encouraging the churches to get on board with their programs during the Saturday and Sunday of the first week, but we do have a genealogy workshop on the Saturday, right? And we have our facilitator right here, Mrs. Louis, and VICA, Melissa Potter of VICA, and VICA in its entirety has been working with Virgin Islands Studies Institute to put this genealogy workshop.
Very significant choice.
Yes, yes. Please, I'm going to ask Ms. Louis to talk about that for a bit, because everybody, if you are interested in tracing your genealogy, please come out to this workshop.
Yes, that's another interesting element, of course, of our history. We are a small community, and you know, we all always try to escape perhaps marrying each other, because we figure that we'd be marrying our cousin.
Absolutely.
So we're just trying to go back into our roots and find out, you know, how we are related. And so we are doing that by, first of all, I did a couple of workshops earlier, and I said, well, look at the three major groupings that we have had here. We have had the Amerindians, we have had the Europeans, and we have had the Africans. And so we are each either one of or a mixture of the three of those. And then we have, of course, a census as far back as 1716, 1717, that shows us the surnames of the Europeans that were here. And so they have left these surnames behind, as well as place names. So it's interesting, and it's going to be exciting, and we are going to try to track, you know, how do you trace your roots. We have various what we call genealogical tools that we can use, and so on and so forth. So come out and, you know, just learn how you can put your family history together.
Yes, indeed. Now, viewers, as you see the calendar for Culture and Tourism Month keep flashing on the screen, a number of events, and that poster is being circulated, is also available on our social media platforms, Facebook, as well as our website. We do want to encourage you to come out. A lot of these workshops, as mentioned by Dr. Smith, are virtual, so you have no excuse not to partake and not to get into what these ladies have prepared so feverishly for you. Ladies, thank you so much once again for bringing light to our history and heritage. I want to again commend Ms. Skelton and Louis for the amazing book that is The Great March of 1949. I do need a copy, and I need you to also tell us where we can get copies of the books, if it is yet available.
Okay. Well, the book launch is on the 24th of November, the actual day that the march did happen.
Great.
And it will be available from Virgin Island Studies Institute. And it will, the event, I should say, it would be part of virtual book launch, and then the book signing will be on that day, so you can come up and purchase your copy on the 24th of November. We're hoping to have it scheduled for 11:30 a.m. Yes, and then we can have an all-day back and forth if anybody wants to come and purchase a copy and
amazing.
And get things signed, get their book signed.
I should have mentioned the cultural food fair, because everybody's going to be looking for that.
Yes.
I have to mention that on the 12th, please get ready. That's at the Pear Park. This year we have something interesting where we'd like to simultaneously have food fairs on sister islands as well.
Oh, wow.
We're working on that, Virgin Gorda and Jost Van Dyke. And I think for next year, we've gotten some further input on how to even expand those.
Okay.
So that's on the 12th of November. And of course, check the calendar out, and you can see the other activities with the museum workshops and the workshops for visual artists. And I just wanted to mention on the 20th and 21st, we have amazing groups working with us. VICA, Virgin Islands Communal Association. Everybody, you saw their performance night on the festival grounds. Get ready for it again. And then on the Sunday, the 21st, I think we're going to try to bring back, APAC might be trying to bring back the Dolores Christopher Festival of the Arts.
Correct.
Yes.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much once again, ladies, and continue the amazing work that you do in preserving and helping to document the history and heritage of the British Virgin Islands. I truly, truly appreciate your efforts.
Thank you
so much.
Viewers, that is all the time we have, but not all the content. Be sure to stick to our Facebook page and, of course, our website at 2it4media.com for all things local, regional, and international. I'm Ron Grant. Have a beautiful rest of the day. Bye-bye.